It's going to pop soon, the AI bubble, and you either prepare now or you get caught in the blast. We might even already be at the start of the pop, so the time to speculate about whether it even is a bubble is long gone. Investors are the first to suffer, but even normal users might lose all their work and be left without tools on which they base their very existence. Stay until the end, and I'll tell you how to avoid the worst of it, unless you're an investor. Then you are probably already. Welcome to B Explains Everything. I am recording this in late July, and the first alarms have already begun chiming. Before we explore what the pop will look like, however, it is important to understand how we got here. And to save you the entire history of the universe, let's start with when most people first started hearing about AI and LLMs. OpenAI first made a serious public splash with GPT-2 and the whole too dangerous to release normally, framing. Then came GPT-3, and then came ChatGPT, which turned AI from a research topic into a mass market spectacle. That timing mattered. There was money looking for a story, technology companies looking for a new growth narrative, and a public that had just seen machine intelligence go from an academic curiosity to something that could write, code, summarize, argue, and hallucinate confidently in plain English. The early investment pitch was extremely easy to understand. These first models were not trained on infinite hardware, they were not trained on all possible data, and they still produced impressive results. So the story sold to the market was simple. If this is what the early versions can do, then just keep scaling and the gains will continue. And investors bought that story hard. At the same time, AI hype stopped being only about text. Image generation, voice cloning, music generation, and all the other prompt-driven demo magic created the sense that an entire new industrial revolution had just shown up in browser tabs. Then ChatGPT exploded like a supernova. Now it was not just investors and engineers paying attention. Boards wanted AI strategies. Founders wanted AI companies. Enterprise buyers wanted to know what their AI plan was. Every major technology company suddenly wanted the market to see them as an AI company. The important thing is that the technical progress at first was real. The jump from GPT-2 to GPT-3 was dramatic. The jump from GPT-3 to 3.5 was commercially dramatic because ordinary people could suddenly use it in a conversational interface. GPT-4 was still impressive, but that was also roughly the point where the curve started to feel less vertical. After that, the promises kept getting bigger while the visible leap started getting smaller. GPT-5 was always about to arrive. AGI was always somehow around the corner. Then ASI entered the conversation, which mostly seemed to mean, please continue funding us while we imply that history itself is about to be replaced. But underneath all that, a more important thing was happening. The returns from pure scaling no longer looked infinite. We still got better models. We got more polish, multimodal systems, better tooling, larger context windows, and reasoning models that were really a form of automatic prompt engineering built into the product. That is real progress. But it did not feel like the same kind of progress as the first giant jumps. And that matters, because once the technical lead becomes harder to extend, the financial story becomes much harder to defend. That is why the AI bubble is primarily financial, not technical. The technology is real. The valuations are the fantasy. If you want the closest historical comparison, the best comparison is the dot-com bubble. During the dot-com era, investors were not wrong that the internet mattered. They were wrong about where the value would settle, how quickly profits would appear, and which companies would survive long enough to benefit from the technology they were helping fund. That is very close to where we are with AI. Financially, the pattern is similar enough to be boring. Capital rushed in before stable business models existed. Narratives about future dominance got priced in long before real margins showed up. Companies were valued not on what they had already proved, but on the fantasy that they would own the next layer of civilization. And once that type of hype happens, companies stop being judged like companies, but like fever dreams to fuel investor hopes and greed. In 1999, the story was that anything attached to the internet had a claim on the future. In 2026, the story is that anything attached to AI has a claim on the future. The technology underneath both stories is real. The financial side are where people lose their minds, but let's instead look at the technical side. The internet did not stop working because Pets.com exploded. Routers and fiber optic cable did not care about valuations. Web servers did not need reinstallation because investors got wiped out. The crash mostly destroyed bad business models, gambling investors, and companies that had confused attention with durable economics. That is exactly the kind of distinction people keep missing with AI. If OpenAI disappeared tomorrow, the Transformer architecture would not disappear with it. If Anthropic vanished, the idea of tool-using agents would not vanish. If a heavily funded frontier lab imploded, you would still have open weight models, local deployment, evaluation techniques, orchestration patterns, and a global engineering community that already knows how to build with these tools. That is the technical parallel. The hype is based on the assumption that a handful of companies can permanently capture the value of that technology at venture scale. And this is where the current market gets even uglier than the dot-com comparison. Frontier model companies are spending extraordinary amounts of money to create leads that competitors increasingly erase in months, weeks, and sometimes days. Some of those competitors are closed labs. Some are open-weight releases from countries that may not align with your political stance. Some are companies willing to accept much lower margins because they are not carrying the same investment burden or the same narrative premium. So the moat is getting thinner at the exact moment the cost of building it is exploding. Then add the pricing problem. The promise of cheap AI labor was built on subsidies and abstraction. Most regular users interact with AI through a flat monthly subscription and therefore never see the actual cost of the work being done. That creates the illusion that intelligence has become almost free. But once you move from ordinary chat to agentic AI, the meter starts moving very fast. Agents plan, call tools, retry, inspect outputs, delegate, loop, and consume huge numbers of tokens. At that point, AI stops looking like magical free labor and starts looking like metered labor with a credit card attached. That creates a brutal trap for users, but also a serious dilemma for the labs. If they raise prices, AI gets less attractive as a labor substitute. If they lower prices, they make it even harder to justify the money already burned chasing scale. That is a very dot-com kind of problem. There's real technology, real adoption, real value, but ridiculous economics. When the bubble bursts, investors will lose first when the valuations collapse and companies disappear or merge at bargain bin prices. The lucky companies become quiet infrastructure divisions inside larger firms. Some products people think of as permanent turn out to have been temporary subsidies with a login page. But the important thing is, what does not happen? The underlying technology does not vanish just because the capital structure around it collapses. Tulips did not become biologically useless after tulip mania. The internet did not become technically useless after the dot-com bust. And LLMs will not need retraining because OpenAI goes belly up. The math does not care. The architectures do not care. The engineering knowledge does not care. The open models do not care. If one company dies, the field does not die with it. What changes is who captures value, who gets wiped out, and who made the mistake of assuming that one vendor, one product, or one subsidized pricing model would last forever. So there won't be an AI apocalypse outside of Wall Street. I expect something much more ordinary. The market reprices. The hype cools. The weakest business models die. The strongest technical ideas survive and thrive. The true builders keep building and create more value than ever. And the tools become more normal, more interchangeable, more infrastructure-like. In other words, more useful. Because once the fantasy burns off, what remains is the part that actually works. That is what happened to the internet. And I think that is what happens here too. There are 3 practical preparations. First, build portable systems. Your prompts, agent definitions, tool chains, and workflows should survive a model swap. The knowledge you build into your agents must survive into and beyond next week's new model release. Second, control and measure outputs instead of worshiping brands. The best model is not the one that wins the coolest benchmark this week. It is the one that completes your task well enough at a cost you can actually live with. Third, learn how to operate your own AI infrastructure. That can mean local models, open weight deployments, rented GPUs, or just architecture choices that make replacement possible. Because if I am right, the long-term winners will be the people who learn how to use the technology without becoming dependent on the bubble around it. Click subscribe and follow for more, and leave your comments and questions below so I know what you think and what you want to focus on next. This has been B Explains Everything, and I'll see you next time.